Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for the MCC Home Instead Aging Well series. Today we are going to be talking about estate planning. So financial planning is important at any age, but for seniors, it really means having the confidence that you're going to have the money that you need to do retirement your way. And here to talk to us about that today is Shan Wilkins from Home Instead.
Hi.
Shan, thank you for joining us today.
You bet.
Before we begin, I do want to mention that we have saved time for questions at the end, and we do have someone monitoring the chat. So anytime you have a question, just feel free to go ahead and throw that question into the chat. Shan, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So retirement, it's on everyone's mind, but let's talk a little bit about retirement in this age of COVID-19 during the pandemic. Has much changed now that we're all living in a pandemic?
I don't think for planning for retirement has necessarily changed, other than you can conduct more business now than you could before the pandemic online. So more resources are available, like to do your will, the living will, those types of things you can do online. You can do Zoom now, so you don't have to leave your home. So convenience-wise, I think things have changed, but not the fundamental that you need to plan.
We are living in the digital age, and you're right, I do see a lot more. I see commercials on TV for pay $98 and we can do your living will for you.
Right. Yeah, and I would take advantage of those things. Everybody's busy doing things, and so if you can do the work online at the convenience in your home when it's convenient for you, I recommend people do that. And it's less stressful if you can do it at home and you don't have to worry about going to see an attorney and making an appointment, maybe taking time off work, or not going to an event, or taking away from family time. So I do recommend people take care of some of these issues with the technology that's out there, and don't be afraid to explore the internet and talk to experts about some of those opportunities online that they can use to plan for their estate.
Well, I was doing research for this, I saw that it said on average most people spend more time making a dinner reservation or looking up what movie to watch than actually planning for retirement.
I think that's true. We don't think about those things. We put it off. It can be a very dry topic. It can be boring, and you want to put it off. You don't, and I think people associate it with end of life, of course. So people don't want to talk about it. And so yeah, I imagine if you looked around and asked your friends and family, hey, do you have a will? Did you plan for your estate planning? I think maybe 1 out of 10 will tell you yes. Would be a guess. I mean, I don't know, but I know people that should have it done and they don't. And they know they don't have it done. And they just, oh, there's always tomorrow. It's summertime now. I got things to do. I'll do it in the winter. So yes, I would agree with that.
Well, retirement is supposed to be your reward for all of your years of hard work, but really, as you mentioned, it might be a dry topic, but it takes planning to retire your way, and retiring well doesn't happen on its own.
No, there's financial planners, there's estate planners, attorneys and CPAs are usually involved. People seek those types of professional people out to do planning, but I tell people all the time, it's financial planning and estate planning are two different things. It can be two different things, and so always seek out an estate planner and know. And they probably are attorneys, but there's places you can go on the internet to get a list of who's licensed to do estate planning. Every state has different laws, so you really want an expert to walk you through those guidelines. What you may be able to do in another state, you may not be able to do here in Nebraska. So especially if you've moved from one area to another, a lot of people will go from one state to another state to retire in. So I really recommend, especially if you're going to do that you look for an expert in your new state, and just make sure everything you've planned, if you have planned from where you previously lived, the state laws, what's different and what you may need to change.
Well, you mentioned an estate planner and an accountant and a lawyer, and all of those roles play different. They play different parts of your estate planning, but really it's about knowing your numbers. And statistically, many people severely underestimate the amount of money that they are going to need once they retire.
Yes, and in fact, our largest workforce will be 65 and older in, I think, less than 10 years. So that tells us a couple things. It tells us a lot of people did not plan, or inflation got carried away, or and so they didn't save enough. And some people want to keep busy. So there's a couple of things. I tell people, make a list where you want to be in 5 years, every 5 years. So even if you're 25 or 85, think about where you want to go, because if you have a visual, then you can, okay, if I want to go to Hawaii, that's going to cost money. And you can start making a plan to go to Hawaii. So it's no different in that aspect, what age you are. But when you're estate planning, what goes into that? If you have property, if you have a bank account, if you have a 401k. I know people that have forgotten they had 401ks from jobs they had 10 years ago, and they get a letter in the mail, and they're like, oh, I forgot all about this. And I'm like, really? But they do, people forget. So I would just write down where you want to be in 5 years and what assets you have that will help you accomplish those goals, and what do you need for assets. And I mean money, that type of thing, to get to that goal.
And if you're looking at where you want to be in 5 years, one of the things that you should consider is what is and what isn't covered by Medicare or Medicaid.
Yes, so that is true. Every year, Medicare has enrollment. I believe it's around October, November, and I really recommend people talk to an insurance agent that knows those different plans, because the plans are going to change as you age, just like they do. Like younger people may have higher deductibles because they don't go to the doctor as often, or that type of thing. So medical insurance is no different for people over 55. As circumstances changes, your plans need to change with that. And so part of that estate planning is, what insurance do I have that's going to maximize my dollars and my health, so I can save dollars to put towards my retirement. Yeah. And then there's medications. Sometimes Part D for Medicare doesn't cover all your medications. And so I tell people, a lot of pharmaceutical companies will give you options to have discount programs and stuff like that. So don't be afraid to ask your pharmacist about those programs, because saving every penny counts towards retirement. And then have a retirement fund. Talk to that financial planner and decide what money are you going to put aside every month. And there's ways now, a lot of people will just have it automatically deducted on top of their 401k. They have other funds just automatically deducted from their paychecks that go into a savings account. And then at the end of the year, I know people that talk to a financial planner and say, okay, I have these funds, where can I invest them? And plan for retirement that way, because they've never seen the money in their bank account in the first place. It just goes into that other savings account.
Which works well for a lot of people.
Kind of like the Christmas fund. Yeah.
Well, really, when looking at planning for retirement, it's thinking about, what is that lifestyle going to look like? Because there could be a shift in lifestyle. So you mentioned asking for discounts, because every penny counts. So a lot of times when someone's working, they don't think about those discounts as much. But it matters if you've had a reduction in your income and what your retirement income might look like.
Well, I tell people we talked about the Social Security website. So really, two things. I don't know that we can count on Social Security, so keep that in mind. But go to that website, see where it will tell you where you were at and what you would collect when you do retire. And then think about your lifestyle that you're in right now. Think about your house, your car, your vacations, how much you spend for entertainment, and then write down your goals, and then say to yourself, where am I? Okay, I'm not going to need a 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom house, or a 2-bedroom. I need a 2-bedroom house and 1 bathroom versus all this space. And so by planning, you can maybe sell assets at the right time, so you maximize your value you get out of those and put towards retirement, all those types of things.
I went to the Social Security website, and the great thing about it is it can project based upon, you can put different numbers in there. Oh, I think that I want to save this much, and it'll project for you how much you'd need to save, or how much you'd be living on, and how much it looks like with Social Security. And one thing that I don't know that everyone knows is Social Security is not meant to be your only source of retirement.
Yes.
It's the government says it's supposed to be about 40% of your retirement.
Right. It's a
on the website.
It's a supplement, a stipend. It's not. Yes. So I tell people, can you live on if they feel they're living comfortably? Can you live on half of that? Can you live on a quarter of that? And those are the things they need to think about when they retire, because income stops. So if income stops, and you don't, let's just not count Social Security, you can't afford it. You can't pay for anything. So what can you do to make sure you're going to have that revenue source coming in even after you've stopped working, if you choose to stop working? And so that's a matter of, you got to depend on yourself, and you got to plan, and you got to save. And so you got to make up, what, 60%?
According to the website.
Yep. Yeah. And so, apartments, if you think, oh, I'll sell my house and live in an apartment, apartments can be expensive, and more expensive than homes. And so there's reverse mortgages out there. I don't personally know a whole lot about those, but I tell people, when you talk to your estate planner, don't hesitate to talk about everything, from what it costs you for your insurance. What does that look like when you do get Medicare and you're still working? So do you keep your employer's insurance, or do you take Medicare, and how much can I save? And remember, Medicare, if you have supplements, isn't necessarily free. So there's different plans within Medicare. And so you have to think about all those things, but it's about where every dollar can be saved.
And it's also thinking about where you want to live, like you mentioned. If you have this 5-bedroom house, is that really something reasonable, or is that something desirable? Do you want to switch to an apartment living? Do you want to switch to assisted living? Do you want to adjust your own home for what your current needs are as you're transitioning into retirement?
Yeah, and Home Instead can help with can recommend people that can come in and look at your home and tell you what modifications and those types of things can be made so that you can stay at home. We can tell you what the costs will be and those types of things, so you can start planning now. Even if you're going on 65, start, those are the times to, do I need this house? Okay, I want to keep my house until maybe I'm 70, back to that. Every 5 years, make a plan. And if this is the home you want to stay in, then think about your health. And if you're in good health, great. But if you have some things, like arthritis may be slowing you down, or people with MS, they modify their homes, those types of things. So you have to think about, okay, what's that going to cost? And when do I start to have some of those modifications? Do I want to have those when I don't have a job and I'm receiving my income from my retirement? Probably not. So think about those things and do it sooner than later. So at least if you're aware, then you have power to make the changes. And I tell people, don't be afraid to have the conversations and explore how you can stay in your home, because it can be done. It absolutely can be done. Even people with dementia, if they have people coming in and helping care for them, they can stay at home. So families can do that, but it takes planning and being aware of what your income is so you can save and do those types of things.
It sounds like you're saying that planning is really key. Planning ahead is key. Researching options, researching costs, talking to loved ones.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest, hardest part of it, is sitting down and talking with your loved ones. I've seen families have very different dynamics. Every family is different. And so some of those conversations can be very hard for a child to have with their parent, and other times there's other families, it's easy. And so don't hesitate to talk about it, but I tell families, do it over a dinner, do it over something that the person you want to talk to with enjoys, and bring it up subtly. And you don't have to resolve everything the first conversation. It may take a lot of conversations, but don't be afraid to broach the subject and have it with your parents, but give them the dignity of remaining the parent. And then there are some parents that don't want their children to know. So in those situations, I recommend that that's fine. Just ask them where their paperwork is at, who they would want them to go to when something happens to them, so that things can be done in a manner that they would want it done. So that's what I tell families. But planning is, and letting people know what your expectations are, because you're not going to have a voice when you're not here. So write it down. If you do nothing else, write it down. Sign it, write it down, and leave it in an envelope and tell people where it's at.
Or make a video.
Yeah, you can. Today, yes, you can make a video with your iPhone. Absolutely.
Or even you can make a statement of desires. So
Yes.
a statement of desires isn't a will, but it is something that'll let people know what you actually want to happen.
And I think that's a struggle for families who have a loved one and they don't know. They're trying to do the best they can, and they do worry internally, and it stresses them out. I think this is what my mom wanted. I think this is what my dad wanted. This is what I would want, I think. And so that, if you just write down your desires, or you do plan and you do have a will and you have a direction for your family to go, it's such a relief, because then it takes all the guessing out of it, and they have a path that they can follow and do things, and they're happy knowing that they're doing things the way you would want it done, and they're not second guessing. So and then it takes a lot of stress out of stuff. So.
Well, having that is such a gift. It's a gift to your family and a gift to your loved ones, because they don't have to figure out what they think you might want. Something, as we talked about, you might have said one time, it might change over time. And I know I had started that process, and it had a list of every eventuality. Okay, if you're paralyzed, if you're in a car accident, if you're in a vegetative state. And I found it a little overwhelming to answer every single possibility.
Well, you don't have to answer it all at once. If you're planning, you can take it in steps. When it gets overwhelming, click it off and come back to it at another time and do a couple more questions, because it is a lot to take in. And so that's what I tell people. You don't have to accomplish everything all at one time. You just have to start the process and set little goals to get, today I'm going to get my will done. I'm going to start that process to get my will done. Do that. Okay, done. When that's done, and I don't know, it may take 4 weeks. But have a list of things you want to get done, and then just go through the process of checking them off and doing those things, but don't feel like everything has to be done right now. Making a will is a process. It's not going to be done in one day, usually. You have things to think about that when you start these processes, you think you know what everything you got to do, but you don't. Things come up, and so I tell people, just make a list. Understand there's a process. You don't have to have it all done in one day, but at least go forward with planning. Where are all my funds at? Do I have a Christmas account? Do I have a 401k? Oh, do I have a Roth ROA? Do I have a pension? Do I get my spouse's Social Security? They died 10 years ago. I've had families where mom or dad have remarried, and then that spouse has passed away. And so just, write down where all your assets are at and put it somewhere, and just recheck it every year or two. And if something's changed, add to it or remove, that type of thing. Where's your life insurance? What kind of life insurance do you have? Some people have term life insurance, and some people have just one where it pays out when they pass away. So do you have long-term care insurance? That type of thing.
Well, and that long-term care insurance is so important, because more than likely someone would be disabled more than die. And so they said it's something to really consider that's often not looked at.
Yes, and So that would be an insurance expert can talk people through the long-term care insurance and when should you buy long-term care insurance? Should I carry disability insurance? All those things. So that's why there's so many, estate planning isn't just, I can call up my attorney. Well, you have insurance, so you want to talk to an insurance expert. You have taxes, you want to talk to a tax expert. You have your will, that's, an attorney. I have a living will, well, let me talk to my doctor. So that's why it's important to understand there's people in every state that are licensed to be estate planners that can talk about all those things, and then you have it all centrally located. That's the key. And you just let somebody know in your family where it's at. You don't have to make it a big deal. Just, hey, I just want you to know I have all my papers downstairs on the second shelf of the bookcase if something should happen to me. That type of thing.
Well, another consideration is how you may age.
That's true. If you age well and you're active and that type of stuff, then yeah, you just every 5 years make a list. If you unfortunately have had an accident and you find yourself disabled, that may speed things up. You may have to get some things done, or if you've have a serious illness. So that's why I say plan it when you're healthy. That way, if something does come up, it won't be such a burden on top of what you're going through at the time. And it is true. It's how you age. Some people can drive longer than other people can drive. Some people are snowbirds and they can travel back and forth longer than others. So yeah, a lot is how you age.
So at any stage of this retirement game, sage advice has been to live below or at your means. So do you have any tips or resources for helping determine what that is?
Estate planner. And just being aware of what your bills are. And it goes back to planning and taking time to think about, am I going to need cable TV? Do I need cable TV right now? Okay, I do. That's a want, and that's the other thing I had someone tell me once. When you're planning, what is a want and what is a need? And everybody's wants and needs are different, so make a list of that. And I thought that was rather interesting. Do you need cable or is it a want? He didn't say you're going to disconnect it, but he's like, write down what your wants or needs are. And then, if you're traveling, you don't need cable at that house. Have it disconnected, save those dollars. Put your water heater on vacation. I didn't know you could do that. And then the other thing was interesting, make sure on your water bill, your phone, your cable, that you have another person. If something were to happen to you, on your bank account, on all those bills, list somebody else, let that person know that in that way, if something were to happen to you, they can call easily and take care of all those things. Because if you don't have anybody listed and something were to happen, and you need your cable page, you need your rent page, your mortgage page, and you don't have someone listed as a person of contact on that account that someone else can talk for you, nobody will talk to anybody. And they won't, and they shouldn't. You don't want people to be able to call the phone company or the utility company and talk for you, but you should have a second person listed in case an emergency arises. So I tell people that all the time, especially if you're single and on your own and you don't have a spouse. But a lot of times those companies won't even talk to your spouse unless you're listed.
So do you think that as you retire that possibly there's a shift in mindset that needs to occur? For example, we've been talking a lot about really saving those dollars and how every dollar counts. Say, for example, even your subscription services. So if you're working, you might say, I haven't used that in 3 months, or I haven't used the gym, but I can afford it, it's no big deal. But then if you're retired or transitioning, then it might be a big deal tidying up all those loose ends. So is there a shift in mindset that needs to occur along with retiring?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And what's fun about this technology is there's all kinds of technology that there's an app now that will remind you of all your subscriptions and tell you which ones you've used. Kind of scary, but it will tell you, hey, you haven't watched any Netflix videos in 30 days. Do you want to keep that subscription? So there's some things out there with technology that can also help you with the mind shift and the mind change, because you got so much going on, you don't sometimes remember what you've subscribed to and what what memberships do you pay. Do you need a membership to a gym, to a theater? Do you need all those things? To the zoo? I haven't gone to the zoo in 5 years, but I keep renewing the membership. You may just come out of your bank account and you've forgotten about it. And once a year, when it does pop up, you mean to cancel it, but you don't get around to it. And that technology has it set up so you can hit cancel and it'll do it for you. So it's pretty neat. You can, I believe you can search on the internet subscription monitoring, and you'll be able to, there's a ton of technologies out there that'll do that for you. So you don't have to actually take the time to cancel it.
Another benefit of being in the digital age, something that can help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going back to Social Security, we've been talking about that a lot today.
Yeah.
Most of today's seniors are eligible to retire at age 62, but that may or may not benefit you. So what are some factors to consider if you did want to retire early?
If you didn't want to retire, or you do want to retire?
If you want to retire around age 62.
Look at Social Security. So the longer you wait to collect your Social Security, the more Social Security pays you. I believe it's 72 will maximize the dollars Social Security will pay you. And most people forget you have to pay taxes in most states on your Social Security checks. Just like we pay income tax. Most states, there's a few that don't do that, but quite a few do. So take that into consideration and use that calculator. And so if you're 55 today and you want to retire at 62, well then you better write down everything, see where your dollars are at, start finding out where you want to live. There are states that are friendlier than others for retirement, and so really start looking into those things. It doesn't take a financial expert or an attorney to do, or a CPA to do some of this research. I think you can probably Google retirement-friendly states and start your search and see what the different states offer to retirees. So if you want to retire at 62, do you want to retire in a warmer climate or a colder climate? Do you like to hunt? Do you like to hike? You like Arizona. I want to hike and all that. Well, what's Arizona like for a retirement person? What's the state tax off my Social Security and my other income that's going to be coming in? Those types of things.
So a financial planner sounds key in this process. Mm-hmm. And really, you can see a financial planner regardless of where you are.
Right, you can see any of these experts wherever you're at, especially with Zoom and all this other stuff. You don't have to leave the comfort of your home to make those appointments.
You don't have to leave the comfort of your home, and really it's never too late to look at this.
No, it's never too late and it's never too early. I think some of the neater things are families are actually, we're finding more and more having these conversations with younger and younger children. College age is probably when you graduate from college, you should probably be thinking, okay, what am I going to do? What's 5 years look like? You should start that 5-year plan. And once it becomes a habit, you will get into it and you will do it and write down goals and those types of things so you can see where you're going, give you a sense of direction.
For someone who may be hesitant to see a financial planner, what would you say some of the benefits are?
They'll give you insight to where you're at now, where you what it'll look like, where you want to go. If you have a major life change, like I'm going to retire at 65 and I'm moving to Florida, but then you didn't have grandchildren, just like the commercials. You didn't have grandchildren when you planned that, and now you got grandchildren. You still want to go to Florida, but now you want to retain residence maybe in the state where your grandchildren are at. So financial planners can help you pivot and turn faster because they know where your money's at. They keep it listed for you, and they can tell you okay, this investment is better, it's more steady, or this is going to give you faster growth, or this is an asset. It helps you determine, is the market a good time to sell my home? Is it a good time to downsize my vehicle? All those. What's the interest rate to get a new vehicle? What's property tax, on a condo versus my home? All those things financial planners can talk to you about. And then the savings and where can I get the most bang for my buck, and what type of retirement account? And when can I withdraw? Just because you have a 401k, they still have regulations just like your Social Security. So at what age can you withdraw from your 401k? And if you withdraw too soon, you can have a penalty for that. So just those types of things they can help you with.
We talked a little bit earlier about having those uncomfortable conversations, and really when having them and being respectful, because this person is still an adult. But are there signs where it may be time to intervene in handling some money affairs?
Yeah, if you are going to a loved one's home and you're a caregiver for them, and you see that maybe they haven't opened the mail is stacking up, the newspapers are there, but they're not read like they used to be. People still do get those newspapers. The house is a little more cluttered, the refrigerator's empty. Those types of signs, or something's going on. Something, you get late notices in the mail because they didn't pay the cable bill, and that's not like them. Has their walk changed? Has their, do they sleep downstairs instead of going upstairs to their bedroom? And they can be very subtle things. Yes, there's lots of signs.
Well, one of the things that I'd have to say, Shan, I learned from you is in assessing these signs and talking with other people, sometimes it's easy to say, oh, well, this thing happened, so mom's getting old or dad's getting old. But really going a step further, because it's a symptom of something.
Right. So dementia isn't supposed to happen when someone gets old. You're not supposed to feel stiff and ache and have headaches, and none of that is things that you're supposed to happen when you get older. So if your loved one, there's always a reason for everything. So it's no different with an aging loved one. If they're not opening their mail, for instance, and it's piling up, what's going on? Maybe they just need their eyes checked, and they don't know, they don't want to ask you to take the time off work to take them to an eye appointment, or they don't know how to get to the eye appointment. And, they've lost their appetite. There's not a lot of food in the house. Well, why have they lost their appetite? So those are the types of things. There's always a reason why, I tell people. Always. So you just have to have the patience to ask in a dignified way, in a nice way, be respectful. Hey, Mom, what's going on? You don't have any groceries in the fridge. Should we go get some? Don't say you're not eating, but hey, let's go get some. And she might say, oh, I haven't been that hungry. Oh, that's unusual. What's going on? And all those are respectful ways to broach the subject to find out what's going on. And realize you may not get the answer right away. You may have to really be sensitive and just sit back and watch a person's behavior to see are they grabbing tables? I have found with people that are older and all of a sudden their eating habits change, maybe their dentures aren't fitting right. So it can be really simple things, but just be respectful in the way that you treat them and talk to them. You'll get farther faster.
Shan, I love that example of the refrigerator of, instead of, what's going on? Why aren't you eating? There's no food in here.
Right. Let's go to the grocery store.
Right.
And I don't want to. Well, that's unusual. Why not? And they'll then, instead of pointing the finger, you're being more respectful of that person and more sincere. And to me, it would look like you're trying to help me solve a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
You're a part of the team.
Right. You're not being accusational and scolding me because there's no food in my refrigerator. There's a reason there's no food in the refrigerator. So, and just be mindful. I know people get busy and daughters tend to be the caregivers, and they have to work and all those things. So you get exasperated. You go over to your mom's house and there's no food in the fridge, and it's like, in the caregiver's mind, that's one more problem now on top of all these other things. So it's hard when you're in it to process, but I tell people, always take a deep breath, count to 10, and then proceed. And that's pretty easy to do.
So Shannon, how do you broach these subjects? Because there's just a whole spectrum. So you might have someone who you have to intervene right away because it's a crisis situation. But I think a lot of times it's something that happens over time. And it might be someone who's completely independent, living on their own. And so how do you broach that subject with some sensitivity?
Sit down with it. What I have found has worked the best is if you start out talking about yourself and you look to that aging adult for advice. Hey, I was thinking about planning for my retirement, and these are all the things I have to do. What did you do? And it's not, then you're not telling them what they did, but you're gaining information and probably some guidance. They probably have some, if they have done it, they have some advice to give. But then you're including them, your parents, looking to them for advice, which is what you want to do. And then they'll share that with you, and you can gain that information about what's going on with them in a way that they don't feel cornered and you're trying to be the parent and not let them be the parent, or the older adult, an aunt or something like that. So I always say, talk to them about what you're doing in life and ask them what they would do in those situations.
So if you're building a comprehensive estate plan, let's talk about some of the things that you might be thinking of, such as your beneficiaries and who it's important you designate for certain things.
So statistically, men take care of financial and women take care of health. So I tell people, but don't let that make your decision. Talk to your family, think about, and don't assume any one member of your family wants to be one of these individuals. It can be daunting, and they don't want the responsibility. So, if you're planning these things, I talk to your kids, talk to your nieces, nephews. Who do you want to do these things? A financial POA would pay your bills, would direct your funds if you could not. A health POA directs your health care if you could not. And so those are the things you have to think about. And then talk to your family members. Hey, I was thinking I would want you to be my health power of attorney. And please tell the person. I have a lot of family. They find out in a crisis that their loved one's power of attorney, and they didn't even know. And so now they're not ready for that responsibility, and they don't know what to do. So part of that planning is talking to the individuals you want to do those things for you, educating yourself on what those responsibilities that person will have over you, telling them, and then doing the paperwork, and then telling the rest. If you have, children, if you're going to have your oldest, let's say your oldest and your middle child do it, and you have 7 kids, let the others know so they don't have to, they're aware.
So it's not a big surprise.
It's not a surprise, and everybody in the family knows that those are your wishes. That's what I tell people.
And then also another consideration is having someone who is your designee who will honor your wishes, especially when it comes to potentially a living will, and there are certain things that you want to happen. So this may be the person that you trust, but are they going to execute the things you want done?
It was funny. I had a lady about 2 years ago interview her 7 children to be her power of attorney and her health power of attorney. She interviewed them. She had them come over on Sunday, one-on-one, and she had a list of questions. She said, these are the things I want. And she interviewed her own children and made her decision on which ones were going to do what, which I thought was kind of...
Sounds like she's a smart lady.
Yeah, and it was ingenious because the children took it serious, and they were prepared to have those conversations, and they knew she was taking it serious. So the children didn't fight when she made her decision. So I thought that was a kind of a funny way to do it.
Yeah.
But she enjoyed the time she got to spend with her kids, and she said, I learned a lot about my kids. And that's how she made her decision. So yeah, you have to you really have to make sure the person you designate is going to fulfill your wishes, and talk about why they wouldn't. If they, if they, I'll do it, but if this happens, no. Talk those things through and really pick the right person for you. And it doesn't have to be your kids. I just recommend you tell your kids who you did decide, or your close loved ones who you did decide, and have a conversation. And listen if your family member has objections about, oh, I don't like that cousin Andrew's doing it. Don't get your guard up. Okay, why? Is it just emotional, or is there some legitimate concerns there?
Well, Shan, we have some questions from the chat, so
Okay.
we're going to take a couple of questions.
Okay.
One says, is it necessary to change assets to include your spouse's name if the spouse is already named as the primary beneficiary?
So I'll cover it in two ways. Just make sure on assets, to me, that's home, 401k, life insurance, that type of thing. So just make sure your spouse is listed. Unless there's a divorce or a spouse passes away, I don't think you would have to change anything, but I would check if it's my insurance. Do you have to update those annually, every so many years? The phone bills and things like that. If your spouse owns a business and you're not, what I have found, you're not part of the day-to-day, but then something comes up. If they have a business and you're the spouse, you can't call the Verizon or the cable company, or if you're not on those accounts. So yes, even if you don't own a business and it's just your home accounts, call those companies and say, hey, this is my spouse, and make their date of birth the PIN number. If they call, they need to give their date of birth. And that's easy. Everybody knows their own date of birth, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. So, but think about where you're at in life. Have you had a death in the family? Are you divorcing? Those types of things. And so make sure you update all those, because the last thing you want to do is be frustrated and you got 10 other things going on with a loved one who's in crisis, and you just can't get the phone shut off because you're not on the account.
Well, Shan, I do want to just mention you are not an attorney.
No.
But this is a question that came, so just if you can't answer this. It says, an attorney recommended to honor the wish of donating to specific charities rather than a specific donation amounts.
Second opinion. It's just like a doctor. You can talk to one, if that's what an attorney recommended. I don't know the situation, but you can get another attorney's recommendation. That's what I would, in that situation. It's okay to have a variety of experts tell you what they think would be a good thing to do.
A diversity of experts sounds like a good thing.
Yes, it gives you comfort in knowing if you're hearing the same consistent answer from all the experts, then you know who you initially went to is on track, and it makes you more confident in the person you picked. But if you get different answers, that may be a flag. So yeah, I would, and that I don't know the answer to that, so I would just say if that's what one attorney told you, seek out another attorney in that field and ask them what they think.
Is there a list or resource we can look to as a guide?
Well,
it wasn't specific, it just said as a guide, so I wonder if it's about estate planning or
Yep.
financial planning or...
I'm sorry I don't have the website here. You can do an internet search, state of Nebraska, estate planning, licensed estate planners, and there is an organization that has a list that you can easily access that tells you who is licensed in the state of Nebraska to do estate planning. Same thing with attorneys. If it's a certain field, you can do an internet search. Attorneys that specialize in estate wills and those types of things. So, yeah, they're out there.
What is, in your opinion, the most overlooked item in estate planning?
Land. Asset, the little asset that you may, maybe it was left to you by a loved one. I've seen anywhere from land to mineral rights to 401ks is another one that people forget. You know, they forgot to list it because they forgot they had it. So I would say it's all the assets. It's the, you know, or, oh, that savings account only has a couple $1,000s. It's no big deal. Well, that couple $1,000s was put in there 30 years ago. So who knows it? You don't know. So it's those types of things.
Does everyone need to assign an executor to their will? So if they have a will, do they need an executor for the will?
That would be a question for an attorney, but I would recommend everybody have a will. And it's pretty, these days you can do them online. So I don't know, every state's different, so I would just recommend contacting an attorney, but everybody should have a will, I know that. So I don't know about that. I would contact an attorney.
Another question, what is the best way to find an objective financial planner who has no vested interest in your funds?
Call several. It's just like searching for a doctor or an attorney. It's okay to interview these experts and find out who you're comfortable with, and then take that person, go to a few more, and if you're getting, like I said, consistent answers, that's who you use. But you know, you don't have, it's like you never buy the first house you look at. Why would you go with the first expert you call? And remember, they're working for you, so you're the consumer and you're seeking out their services.
Right, you can get recommendations, and someone recommended recently to me to have a list of questions and interview, say, a minimum of 3, and ask them all the same questions and see which ones you're most comfortable with.
Right. You know, it can be, it's a serious topic, and you want to be comfortable with the person, and it's an intimate thing. Your finances, your savings, where you're going to go, those are, you know, who you're leaving your estate to, those are intimate details, and you want to be comfortable with the person that's the expert that's helping you make those decisions. So absolutely, yeah. Write down 10 questions, ask them all the same 10 questions, and see about the consistency, and then pick the one you're most comfortable with.
And really, if you're going to take the time to do that, it's not a time to be holding back. Ask those questions that sometimes it feels like, oh, I feel like this is a stupid question, or I should know it because I'm this age. No, that's their job, and so ask the question.
Right, and you know, no question, in this case, it's true, no question is silly or stupid. I had a lady that, you talk about, I'll go back to a couple questions where, you know, what's most overlooked. I couldn't believe it, but I had a lady that had a purse collection. It was with quite a bit of money, and the family wouldn't have known it if she had not talked to her financial advisor and mentioned that, and then he listed that, and she listed what she wanted done with her purses, which I giggle at that, but that's an overlooked asset. But because she was comfortable enough with her estate planner, they talked about those things, and she had her specific wishes put down. So, yeah.
Well, that is such a good point, because you don't know something's of value. What's the old saying? Someone's trash is another person's treasure.
Yeah.
And so someone might not, looking at a handbag collection, know that, oh, these handbags are worth quite a bit.
Right, or you know, the baseball card collection, or you know, that now it's is it the video consults, those type. You never know, so just ask. Just, you know,
your unwrapped Beanie Babies.
Right, exactly, the Cabbage Patch dolls. You never know, so just ask. It doesn't hurt. They're not going to take your birthday. They're just going to answer your question. And it may be important to you, and it may not have a lot of financial value, but it means something to you. So think about that when you're also estate planning. You know, things that, like you said, what I may not want may be someone else's treasure. So think about, you know, those little things that may not have value, but your kids may want, those types of things. So yeah, ask your estate planner what happens with those things. You know, what do I have an auction, or do I have an estate sale? I mean, all those types of things.
Now, who is the best person to help assess death taxes? Would that be an attorney?
You know, I would talk to, I know this, I keep saying the same thing. I would ask the estate planner. Every state is different, I know that. I believe federal government gets some of it, the state gets some of it. So I would start with maybe an estate planner or a CPA and ask them about that, because that's another thing. Maybe you want to plan for, maybe you want to help your family out, pay those taxes somehow when you pass. And so that goes into that planning for retirement. How much are you going to put aside, unfortunately, for when you do pass? That type of thing. So your family has funds available to make all your wishes, you know, fulfill them. And so what's that? So I would talk to probably, I would start, if it were me, I'd start with my estate planner. Hey, where do I go to find this out? Because yeah, every state, county, everybody's different.
Well, health, happiness, and wealth are all interrelated, but we don't want finances to take priority, even though they are a high priority, because there are some other things that that can be taken into consideration when retiring. We talked a little bit about mindset, but another is the status of being single or married, and there's a lot of information out there that says if you're a man, stay married. You'll live longer.
That's true. Women live longer than men, and that needs to be, you know, talked about, and you think about that too when you're planning. So yeah, you have to, you know, and it's funny, I'm just giggling because I see a lot of children, people live, even though you've moved out and your parents are 50 and they, you know, they may divorce and remarry, and what's that look like? And I think when you have those situations where you have second families and the adults are older, you really need to have those conversations, because you don't have the same relationships with step families. If your parent is 65 and marries someone, you know, and it's their second husband, your dad has passed, you know, that it gets really personal. So it's really important at that point to get some things settled, so that everybody's on the same page and the new spouse is on the same page, whether it be a woman or a man. So yes, people keep living.
Well, and then another benefit of just having the estate planning and knowing your numbers is helping protect your loved one against fraud.
Protect them against fraud. It relieves a lot of stress. It helps your loved one. It helps, so the person that is helping you, they know where everything's at. They're going to know your wishes. There's going to be less doubt, less bickering. You're done. You know, I'm going to Hawaii because you've done everything you need to do. Or you know you can buy that second smaller house and what that looks like, and all those things, because you've saved for it. It just gives you confidence.
Right, gives you, and then it lets everyone else know, especially if you have that designee, everyone knows ahead of time, and so then you can move forward
confidently. Yeah, it's and people will respect that if you've taken the time, and it means that much to you, that you've done all this work and you've let everybody know. More than likely, they're going to respect your wishes, and it does take the fear of fraud away because you've done all the right things. You know, strangers can't take advantage of you, and it's just less likely to happen. So yes, it does prevent that, the fraud and that type of thing.
Well, Shan, do you have any last thoughts on estate planning and financial planning before we conclude today?
Just do it. I know that sounds so cliche. Just do it, and just remember, it's steps. You're not going to get everything done right away, but the first step is make a list of what you need to do, and then just start doing it. Whether that's that little bit of research, but make a visual list, whether it's on your phone or write it down, and just work towards it. You'll get it done. But yeah, just do it.
And knowing your numbers is empowering.
Yes, like I said, it gives you a lot of confidence. If you have a sense of direction, a structure, you know where you're going, you know what you can do. It doesn't overextend you if you know what you can do and what you can't do. You won't go look at a $100,000 house if you know you want to buy a condo. So it's time saving, it's all those things. So yeah, just do it.
Shan Wilkins from Home Instead, thank you so much for joining us today. We will continue our next in the series, the Aging Well series, the MCC Aging Well series for Home Instead, next month when we talk about seniors and fraud. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next month.